Poverty has actually been falling. Poverty rates have fallen for every demographic group in the United States. And yet homelessness is rising. You can see here it has spiked particularly over the last year, but disproportionately in California. Our homeless population grew by an astonishing 31% over the last 20 years, even as it declined 18% in the rest of the United States. People that would never go and talk to homeless people or much less interview them, they look at those tents and they go, they're poor people. That's like how the mentality works, as opposed to like, no, they became addicted to hard drugs, they stopped working, they overstayed their welcome with friends and family. They usually often stole money or lied or cheated from the folks they were staying with, and then they were finally kicked out onto the street, and then they go just live in the open drug markets, and the open drug markets become the open drug scenes.
Hold up. That's different. I got it.
It's a rusty on my Smirnoff. Simple as that. That's all I got.
Okay.
And if this man don't shut the I do not.
We have a lot of people who are here because they suffer from mental illness. Not saying that that's our problem, but I would say 45 to 50% of the population suffers from mental illness. And now you have somebody who's mentally ill who's now bipolar and all crack, or now they're paranoid schizophrenic and all crack. Skid Row, where most of the rehabilitative services are to try to help the homeless get their lives together. Only problem is it attracts two kinds of people. Like people who really, really want help because they can't afford it anywhere else. And then you have groups of people who come down and exploit them. You have Bloods and Crips who work together to sell cocaine, heroin, and to the people right next to drug programs.
The official Los Angeles city government went out and tried to measure how many people were mentally ill. They came up with that little yellow bar on the left, 25%. When the Los Angeles Times did it, they found 50%, and when UCLA researchers did, they found 78%. Substance use, 75, health condition, 84. The idea that this is just a problem of high rents, I have never met a sober tech executive who got priced out of his apartment living in a tent on the street. Never has happened. 20,000 people were dying every year in the year 2000. Last year, 112,000 Americans died from illicit drug overdoses. It's an incredible increase, and you can just see it skyrocketing. 75,000 of those deaths were from fentanyl. If this continues, we're going to have 1 million people dead in a decade from drug deaths. We're all failing on this issue. It's worse in liberal cities. The New York Times, to its credit, finally acknowledged something that we've been pointing out for a while. San Francisco has far more drug overdose deaths than the rest of the United States. My critics were saying that I was wrong and that the people who were homeless in San Francisco, mostly they were just priced out of housing, and they were all local people from San Francisco. So you see, I'm always interested in asking where people are from. Where are you from?
Alabama.
How long have you been on the street?
7 years.
Drug of choice?
Heroin.
What percentage of people are still using heroin versus fentanyl?
Oh man, 5% still use heroin maybe.
What about meth?
Meth is just like a given mostly. You got to do something to counteract the downer, so people either do meth or crack.
What does it cost per day?
Between 40 and 80 bucks.
Okay.
To maintain.
Were you using before you came?
I did pills for probably 12 years and then did heroin. Everybody, like the majority of homeless people, are that drugs is integral, if not main reason why you're out here.
And what percentage of people on the street you say are from San Francisco originally?
From San Francisco originally, maybe 10, probably more like 6 or 7%.
Where are you from?
Louisiana, Texas area.
How long you been in San Francisco?
Since June. If you're gonna be homeless, it's pretty fucking easy here. I mean, if we're gonna be realistic, they pay you to be homeless here.
When you said that San Francisco pays people to be homeless, what did you mean by that? Did you mean that literally?
Yeah. I mean, I get $620 a month, dude.
From general assistance,
yeah.
Or what'd you? How was that hard to get?
Fucking phone call, bro. A
Wow.
fucking phone call. 200 food stamps and $620 cash a month.
Wow.
Forget about it. Why wouldn't I do it? You know, it's fucking free money, dude.
It's interesting. After we put this out, our critics said that's absurd that just 6% of people on the street are from San Francisco. It's more like 70%. That's the official number. 2 years later, when the San Francisco Police Department cracked down and started arresting addicts, exactly 6% of those arrested were from San Francisco.
San Francisco Police, the California Highway Patrol, and analysts from the California National Guard are all working together, gathering intelligence and patrolling the streets of the Tenderloin and South of Market neighborhoods. Now, the governor's office is saying the combined effort has taken 9.25 pounds of fentanyl off the city's streets over the last 6 weeks, enough to provide a lethal dose to 2.1 million people.
Those officers have arrested, as of yesterday, 41 people. But here's the statistic that may not be surprising to some. Very few of those people are from the city of San Francisco. I think only, as of yesterday, 3 or 4.
But when I interviewed the top mental health advisor in the state of California, the person that personally advises Governor Gavin Newsom I asked him specifically about the funding, whether there's enough money. Here's what he told me.
We keep voting for more money for it. It's not even, I don't even think money's the problem.
Money is not the problem. I don't think money's the problem. I think it's leadership. I think there's a shitload of money. We think it's $11 billion that goes into the state mental health budget. That's number 1 per capita in the United States.
It's official. Governor Newsom's mental health measure, Prop 1, has passed, marking the first update to the state's mental health system in 20 years. Proposition 1 authorizes the state to borrow $6.4 billion to build housing and treatment beds. It also restricts how counties use money from a 2004 tax on millionaires meant to fund mental health services. Critics say the change threatens programs that are keeping people from becoming homeless in the first place, but the governor is praising its passage. The governor issued a statement reading in part, "This is a huge victory for doing things radically different when it comes to tackling homelessness. Now it's time to get to work. Thank you, California."
Here's a chart of the mental health revenue in California. You see we had a special tax on millionaires, and it's brought in more money than ever for mental health.
A new audit has found that California did not properly track the billions of dollars it spent to combat the homelessness crisis.
The state legislative audit committee released a report saying that homeless numbers jumped 53% in the last decade, with an estimated 180,000 people unhoused in California. That's despite the spending of more than $20 billion to stop it.
My initial reaction is that this is a big problem.
Political analyst Jessica Levinson says the even bigger issue in the report is the lack of accountability, as the audit can't verify that 3 of the 5 homeless programs the state is funding are working.
The audit found the ICH Council did track homelessness spending between 2018 and 2021, but not since then.
If you're a taxpayer, right, you should be outraged because obviously your money is being wasted. But even if you're a homeless advocate, someone that wants to support these programs with state dollars, you should be outraged, right? Because the reality is they're clearly not getting people the help that they need.
Is revealing that after the city of LA shelled out $800 million to house the homeless, hundreds of apartments and motel rooms acquired with that money are sitting empty right now. Joining us now is reporter Jamie Page, whose team at the West Side Current has this exclusive reporting, which you can read online right now. Jamie, thank you for this important reporting. Can you give us sort of the bottom line version for people that may not have read it?
Yeah, the high view is that the city spent $800 million on properties that go anywhere from motels and hotels to high-end luxury buildings that still remain empty. We started reporting on this a year ago. My partner, Chris LeGras, decided to drive to a $50 million apartment building just out of curiosity to see what our taxpayer money was buying. And when he went there, it was empty. So him and I started driving around the city to go and look at other buildings. And subsequently, we found that hundreds of rooms remain empty. Again, some in high-end luxury buildings that that nobody is living in to this day.
And you also found that the city was way overpaying for some of these properties, too.
Yes. in some cases, millions of dollars. And it's in our reporting. And I think people, if you can, go to westsidecurrent.com and look at this, because we give you plenty of examples of where properties we paid millions of dollars. In some cases, the developers bragged about setting records in the zip codes that they had sold the properties to Hackla.
Anything is better than being on the street.
So says Daniel Marroquin, a resident of the Cecil Hotel, while at the same time, a man spent his day on the sidewalk of the hotel. The windows are plastered with signs welcoming prospective tenants. But according to the LA Times, only a third of the hotel's 600 rooms are occupied.
We were astounded by the cost.
Andy Bales inquired about a master lease of an entire wing of the hotel for the graduates of Union Rescue Mission's recovery program.
$1,242 for a 160 square foot room that doesn't have a kitchen or a bathroom is just not marketable.
The Cecil is a privately funded housing project. Calls to the company that invested reportedly $80 million into the hotel's renovation went unanswered. Also, attempts to talk to the hotel's management failed. The low occupancy rate of the Cecil seems ironic as Mayor Bass calls for a state of emergency on homelessness.
We're going to take the lessons that we learned from COVID and get people housed into motels while we're fast-tracking buildings.
Bales says some buildings on Skid Row get funding to shelter homeless people who continue to use drugs inside. He says they're half empty because some people find them dangerous, and yet they're building more.
How much does it cost to meet your habit?
We're looking at $60 a day.
Has the price come down or gone up?
It's been like a race to the bottom in terms of pricing, to where a gram, even as little as 2 years ago, would have been $200. Now it's down to 15 or 20.
There's an area where homeless people were urinating and defecating, and it was starting to annoy the people breaking into cars.
San Francisco did the same thing. They created a map and an app to track the poo called Snapcrap. Except, here's the thing, and there were 118,352 markers in total, over 28,000 markers.
Oh,
Except,
my
no,
gosh.
but hold on. That's not dog poo, it's human poo.
Ew!
Yes.
No!
There are 65 reports of human poop littering the streets and alleys every single day in San Francisco.
Ew.
Like this man who openly defecates on Ventura Boulevard, and on this day tosses a bag of his bodily waste onto business owner Paul Scrivano's SUV.
Every single day, every single morning, I'm wiping that off my property before I have to do business.
Sir, why are you throwing feces at people?
Who?
You threw feces at this gentleman.
This guy has to understand. I'm half paralyzed, I'm blind, I have no card for 9 years.
So the city tried to build a public toilet last year, but then gave up when the cost hit $1.7 million. Not $1.7 million for a public toilet system, $1.7 million for one toilet. And this wasn't some magic toilet that catches your phone when you drop it.
That's crazy. It's just sort of an artifact of everything that's going crazy in the city. How can it possibly be $1.7 million?
There was actually supposed to be an announcement by state and local public officials here today proclaiming their success in securing the funding from the state. But they abruptly canceled it once word of the price tag got out.
So then a private company took pity on San Francisco and offered to build them their toilet for free. But after, quote, project management, construction management, architecture and engineering fees, permits, civic design review, surveys, contract preparation, and cost estimation, the free toilet was still going to cost almost $1 million. You know, if you tack on fees like that, you're not a city, you're an airline.
So we called some contractors to ask how much they would charge to build a 150 square foot public restroom. This one, near the State Street playground, is only slightly larger, about 200 square feet. No surprise, building costs in San Francisco have recently ballooned. Contractors we talked with say it's about $500 a square foot. That comes to $75,000 for a 150 square foot structure as a starting point.
Each night, tens of thousands of people sleep in tent cities crowding the palm-lined boulevards of Los Angeles. but a struggling musician from South LA thought he had a creative temporary fix. He crowdfunded $100,000 and built dozens of solar-powered tiny houses to shelter the homeless. But on the morning city officials were gathering to celebrate their new nearly $2 billion plan to end homelessness, police and garbage crews were descending on the tiny homes, ordered by the city to seize and destroy them.
I applied to the city in early 2014 to turn my coin-operated laundry into housing. We sit at ground zero of anti-gentrification in San Francisco. Getting this property approved has so far taken longer than it took the United States to win World War II. I've spent $1.2 million. The Board of Supervisors denied the project because it cast a partial shadow on an adjacent schoolyard. If you're wondering why housing in San Francisco is expensive, they make it expensive here. It is intentional.
Bob Tillman has owned a coin-operated laundromat here in the Mission District for 20 years. In 2013, he decided to tear it down and build an 8-story, 75-unit apartment building. Since nobody lives above the laundry, the project wouldn't displace any residents. It would also be in a popular area near multiple public transit stops, which qualified it for a streamlined approval process under state law. And the site had another major advantage for avoiding red tape. It was already zoned for housing.
If you can't build here, then you can't build anywhere.
But San Francisco developers are required to get explicit permission from city officials for any new construction. So in early 2014, Tillman began submitting paperwork to the planning department.
I went through an environmental review, application for conditional use permit, a planning commission hearing, which turned into a second planning commission hearing.
The commission ordered a detailed historical review based on a claim that various community groups had offices on the property in the 1970s and 80s. The resulting 137-page study concluded that the laundry did not merit historic landmark status.
That study cost me $23,000 and delayed me another 4 months.
In late 2017, the Planning Commission was finally ready to vote on Tillman's project, 3.5 years after he first applied to build. Tillman's hearing before the supervisors finally happened in June of 2018, 4.5 years after he began the process. Activists again arrived en masse, and the proceedings quickly turned ugly.
These are the times that each of us must rise to counteract the terror of rising fascism.
At Tillman's hearing, Ronan and the other supervisors didn't object to any aspect of his existing application, but they found a new issue that in the over 4-year process hadn't yet been raised.
In terms of shadows,
they denied the project because it cast a partial shadow on an adjacent schoolyard.
We need another study done so that way we can confirm that these children will be able to live and play and develop in the sunlight.
The building would cast a shadow over this playground in the early morning, and as you can see, it's already shaded by a number of mature trees.
When the choice between expedited development and the health and safety of a child's life, the answer should be a no-brainer.
Supervisor Ronan and the board determined that the shadow impact was a potential violation of an environmental law called CEQA, but according to Tillman, such shadows are not covered by CEQA.
They made up a CEQA ground that doesn't exist under their own law, objectively.
let's be honest about this is about getting top dollar for a piece of property. Mr. Tillman is exploiting the process for his own personal gain.
I followed the laws for 4.5 years. I've spent $1.2 million following the laws, and now at the last minute, they break their own laws.
Housing First, which is unconditional housing given to people experiencing homelessness, works. The New York Times has reassured us of this for 20 years. A recent article said that Housing First is unjustly under attack. The evidence shows that Housing First is a very successful policy. Undoing it would be a disaster. Housing First, turns out the literature shows that it showed that Housing First has failed for years, decades even. In the spring of 2021, a team of Harvard medical experts found that after 10 years of study, just 12% of the homeless remained housed in Housing First housing. You put addicts in their own apartment and they become trashed.
left. We toured the vacant units, now left abandoned under a layer of filth, damage at nearly every turn.
Obviously, we didn't witness it, but I mean, it looks like knife marks, right?
The homes hardly recognizable from what they looked like on move-in day.
Oh. I don't think there's anything that the city could do or some of these agencies would do to ever make me trust them again. I stepped on a needle about a week ago. I didn't prick myself, it was just flat, and it's rather disgusting. I stepped in human crap also, and I think that's what really set me off, and I was just, that's enough.
National Academies of Science, our leading scientific body, reviewed the literature and they found that there's no evidence that Housing First, which is known as permanent supportive housing, contributes to improved health outcomes. And this was all warned over a decade ago. One potential risk of Housing First harm reduction approach would be the worsening of addiction itself. Seems obvious. There's so much evidence that we discovered that Housing First is wrong. It's all ignored by the New York Times, all ignored by Washington Post in favor of ideology. Contingency management works. It's the only thing that works for addicts. Carrots and sticks, says Renee. The thing is, it's not just that we took away the sticks. If you give someone a free apartment and you take it, you're taking it away as a reward for making positive change. In other words, you're taking away the carrot too, not just the stick. This is from the New York Times. God bless Herman Lopez, the only honest person at the Times. In San Francisco, harm reduction programs such as GLIDE do not require staff to guide people toward treatment. It's even stronger than that. They prohibit people from guiding people towards treatment. They argue that such pushiness could scare away clients who are not interested in quitting drugs. They often cite the drug policies of British Columbia, a global leader in harm reduction, but British Columbia set a record for overdose rates last year.
A new report released Friday by the LA County Public Health Department says the crude mortality rate among LA County people experiencing homelessness increased by 55% from 2019 to 2021. And the primary driver of this recent increase was drug overdoses.
Drug decriminalization works. Portugal has succeeded where we failed with addiction. Decriminalizing substance use works in Portugal and it can work in Oregon, says neuroscientist and health journalist.
Portugal has done a great job because on the one hand, what they did was they decriminalized drugs, which led to this shift in beliefs. It'll be a model for other states because it's built off of a model that we already know that works from Portugal.
In 2001, Portugal decided to stop treating drug users like despicable pariahs. The government agreed that no matter what drug you were caught taking, whether it was coke, smack, pingers or puff, you would no longer be punished. Overnight, they decriminalized the personal use and possession of all drugs.
Did Portugal really just legalize all drugs and stop enforcing drug laws? How did they solve their homelessness and addiction problem if that's the case? I decided to interview the head of Portugal's drug program, and I asked him directly whether it was true that they just legalized drugs and normalized drug use and allowed people to use drugs publicly. It's a little hard to understand, so you may have to strain your ears, but give it a shot.
There are a lot of myths around the Portuguese model that, for instance, we just liberalize, you do whatever you want, nobody cares, you have your individual freedom, you have all the room to develop the kind of behavior that you wish. That's not the case. It's important to say that using drugs in Portugal is still prohibited under the administrative law. So there's a clear sign of disapproval of our society to the use of drugs. We do not incentivize, we do not normalize the use of drugs.
In Portugal, if somebody is using drugs in public, what happens to them?
They are told where the nearest safer consumption space is, but a police officer will not arrest them.
If somebody in Portugal starts injecting heroin in public, what would happen to them?
Would be arrested. He would be conducted to the police station. The substance or substances would be apprehended, and if he or she has more than the amount that is established by law, in a table with different amounts for different substances, if he has more than the amount that is calculated on the basis of personal use for 10 days, he undergoes criminal procedures as before. Okay? If he has less than that amount, he would be intimated to present himself to the commission. It's not a court, it's not a formal instance, but you will be confronted to discuss his drug use with health professionals. It's mandatory, so with a little bit of muscle, I would say, you have them in front of you. We can try to understand what is happening with this person.
What he's saying is that if you have more than 10 days, they confiscate all the drugs. He said they arrest you, they take you to the police station, they confiscate the drugs. If you have more than a 10-day supply of drugs, then you must go in front of a special commission for the dissuasion of addiction. That's what it's called. This is what we call in the United States an intervention. It's your friends and family, it's the judge, it's the police officer, it's the social worker, and they're all there staring at you saying, you've got a problem because you were using heroin and shooting drugs in public. And how do we know that's a problem? Because that's not something that people that don't have a problem do. We don't have enough psychiatric beds. We've also, in the name of compassion, stopped enforcing what were viewed as insignificant laws like the enforcement of shoplifting. What are you going to do? Send somebody to prison for stealing a deodorant or some candy? It seemed like the right thing to do. 2014, we decriminalized shoplifting up to $950, and we, in the same law, decriminalized drug possession of up to 3 grams of hard drugs.
A controversial new law will go into effect after California voters passed Prop 47. It reduces certain drug and theft crimes from felony charges to misdemeanors.
Under Prop 47, there will be little to no jail time for anyone found possessing drugs such as methamphetamine or cocaine. And any shoplifting, forgery, or fraud under $950 is now considered a misdemeanor.
Apparently nobody was in the room that thought, if you decriminalize the hard drug use and the shoplifting, there might be a relationship.
How do you make your money?
Petty crime,
Like what kind of stuff?
boosting, and getting in unlocked cars.
And how do you boost?
You go in a store and put stuff in your bag and get out.
And then where do you sell it?
There's centers, like essentially one corner where everybody in the city goes to sell their shit.
Is that United Nations Plaza?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or today's the flea market, so you would love the flea market. It's hella exciting.
It's hard to tell it in words sometimes, like the footage doesn't lie, and that's why I started recording.
At night, Frankie goes out with his GoPro attached to his body. From midnight until 3 a.m. over the weekend, he captured what he describes as chaos, with people overdosing, illegal activity throughout the plaza, a scene he says happens every night.
Rampant drug selling, it's basically lawless when the police are not here. It's dangerous. It's dangerous for residents. We often have to wake up people who are in the middle of overdoses just to get through our doors. That's a very dangerous thing to happen, and it's not a new problem.
San Francisco invested $2 million to renovate UN Plaza last year, turning it from what was known as the epicenter of San Francisco drug crisis to a skate park and an area for residents to work out.
This big lot's raising big concerns in Citrus Heights.
What's going to fill the spot? It's going to just go downhill from here, I guess.
Todd Chapman shops here every week, but his last visit got him so upset he posted about it on Nextdoor, getting dozens of responses after an employee told him the growing homeless population in the parking lot, coupled with rampant shoplifting, is forcing them to shut down.
The theft is just out of control. People are filling up their shopping carts and just walking out of the store.
That's what she told you?
Yes, and that there's nothing they can do about it.
Rachel Michelin, president of the California Retailers Association, isn't surprised, saying retail theft is rampant right now. I talked with her exactly 1 year ago when we saw an uptick in disturbing smash and grabs. Michelin says we've made progress since then, but there's still more work to do.
Now at 10, another attack. This time, a homeless man is accused of assaulting a Santa Monica councilman on the city's 3rd Street promenade. Santa Monica's Phil Brock says that he saw the man ripping down signs and asked him not to litter.
I've seen people get stabbed. I've seen people die. I've held somebody as they died.
How'd they die?
Had friends die. They got stabbed in the neck. I saw a dude get shot in the back of the head right here on Mission Street, probably 2 months ago. It was definitely a homeless guy that got shot, and the guy that shot him looks like to probably be homeless.
Now at 11, this shocking video showing a woman in downtown Long Beach strolling down a sidewalk. Moments later, a transient walks up behind her and sexually assaults her, knocking her to the ground. This all happening in the middle of the day.
It was just last Friday afternoon that Rebecca Peterson was walking through downtown Long Beach.
There was a gentleman sitting on the ground, and I mean, there's always homeless around there, so I didn't think anything of it. I just made sure that I walked clearly around him.
Peterson was at the corner of Broadway and Linden.
I kind of felt like somebody was behind me, but I didn't think it was him or anything like that.
That's when the unthinkable happened.
Next thing I know, I feel my dress being lifted up all the way. And I feel him right here on my neck. And next thing I know, he grabs my hips.
The video shows the suspect with his pants unzipped, lifting up her skirt, rubbing up against her, and pushing her to the ground.
I couldn't break away, so I just turned really quick to kind of break his grip. And then he pushed me to the ground.
A Good Samaritan jumped up to help and ran after the suspect with pepper spray. The suspect took off, but was arrested by Long Beach police later that day.
Now I'm learning that the DA deems it not attempt of rape because he didn't tell me he was going to rape me.
Efrain Ansudes is charged with murder for what police describe as a hit-and-run road rage incident on October 31st. In court documents, we found Judge Philip Pennypacker put Ansudes on house arrest with a few restrictions, like stay away from the victim's family, submit to searches, and attend drug and alcohol counseling. His alleged accomplice, Alfred Castillo, was also released on what's called SORP, or Supervised Own Recognizance Program.
I'm shocked.
San Jose's police chief is a former homicide detective who's never seen murder suspects released on SORP while their case goes through the legal process.
This is the ultimate crime. I mean, this is a murder, right? Someone took it upon themselves to go kill another individual.
In another case, Margarita Santillan is facing murder charges for a killing on August 11th on Littlewood Lane. She also got SORPed by Judge Shalina Brown, but Judge Brown added a $1,000 bond.
It's difficult. I mean, we can only, do so much, but we need help.
Broad daylight, I saw someone get raped.
I've been raped, bullied, picked on, stripped naked, robbed.
Somebody get stabbed. I mean, like someone robbed me with a machete today of all my stuff.
Hit in the head with crowbars and bats.
I saw a dude get shot in the back of the head.
Somebody getting shot?
Did they live?
No.
You will end up getting hurt out here.
The other homeless people are like your worst enemy.
These people do not play out here. Besides, I have weapons. I have my protections.
Okay. What kind of weapons?
Bats, hatchets, knives, mace, tasers.
And what's your drug of choice, brother?
Heroin.
Crystal meth.
Meth and heroin.
Crystal meth.
Meth?
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that doesn't smoke.
You don't know anybody that doesn't smoke meth?
No.
We saw a woman who was pregnant just now.
Yeah.
What is she smoking?
Fentanyl.
She's smoking fentanyl, and she's 8 months pregnant?
Yeah.
So are you seeing more people showing up in psychotic states naked now than, say, 2-3 years ago?
Yes, I think so.
I don't know what they're putting in this stuff. I don't know if it was aliens. I'm not trying to sound crazy and stuff.
No, it's fine.
Must be causing all these psychological breakdowns. And I think that they had put a transmitter or something. Because I was able to hear and communicate, and it looked like I was talking to myself.
My job was to intake homeless individuals on the street.
I don't have to be on the streets. I just choose to be.
You just choose to be?
A lot of people are out here because they want to be out here.
Everyone's usually has a serious drug problem.
They kind of quit society.
This right now is literally by choice.
Did you get the sense that they cared whether they were on drugs or not?
No, and I'm not trying to be crazy with it, but definitely not.
I mean, if we're gonna be realistic, they pay you to be homeless here.
They make it so easy and normalize it.
Drug dealers are just being let go over and over and over.
It's like the cops are. It's like they're your neighbor, you know?
They enable them because they allow the open air drug market.
Open street dealing like that, with the cops just across the street, watching them.
I think they've given up
on the people that are out there on the street.
I've never seen anything like it, and I've been in the game for fucking 30 years, dude. Never seen anything like it.
This convicted sex offender set up camp across the street from a Catholic grade school in San Francisco's Richmond district more than 2 years ago. But it was his signs offering free drugs that had authorities moving him out today.
I've been in San Francisco basically homeless for 26 years.
46-year-old Adam Moore tells me he has lived on the sidewalk across the street from Stella Maris Academy for more than 2 years, and that his sign offering free fentanyl for new users is no joke. Moore says he's just passing on the drugs that other people give him in exchange for blankets and supplies he provides.
They feel bad if they don't reciprocate, so they bring me trash that they've scavenged, things that they think are valuable, or they give me some of the drugs that they have, which I don't do.
You're exposing grade school kids to this.
Mm-hmm.
This is not right. You know that.
No, it's, it's shallow.
The kids come out of the school and they see this?
Yeah.
Moore is on the Megan's Law website for lewd and lascivious acts with a child under the age of 14.
I was innocent of all of the charges that I've been accused of, convicted of.
Moore is apparently not considered a high-risk offender, so he does not have to follow the rule to stay 2,000 feet away from any school.
This family was visiting from the East Coast. They were walking here on Main Street. They had just come from a local ice cream store when a man randomly attacked their 6-year-old daughter and knocked her to the ground. Christina Tulloch recalls the helplessness she felt. Over the weekend, she was showing her friends around Santa Monica's Main Street when all of a sudden a homeless man assaulted their 6-year-old daughter, hitting her in the face, causing her to fall over. She also reached for her phone and snapped this photo of the alleged attacker. She says the man is probably between 25 and 35, casually dressed, tall, and was clearly undergoing a psychotic episode.
It's become a public toilet. I rode the Ocean Beach bike path with Wesley Hill today. He's been living in OB for 25 years. We dodged a number of encampments and people's belongings along the way.
You have to negotiate around people sleeping, dogs, and drug paraphernalia in the middle of the path.
Right there, that tiny little dot.
5.5-year-old Lucy Allen shows us where her finger was poked by a needle while playing at Ocean Beach.
It was about like that big, and the point was dented.
Her dad, Elliot, is understandably upset.
It didn't enter my mind that a hypodermic needle would, prick my daughter while she was playing.
He and his wife took Lucy to the doctor. They say they're worried she could get sick and will have to monitor her health.
Just like any child, Lucy was playing in the sand. She was sifting through it when she got pricked by the needle. But this isn't the first time this has happened. 10 News spoke to a family about a year ago that encountered a needle in the same location on the same beach.
Ben Murphy's 5-year-old was injured by a syringe in the sand.
I had no idea what could happen to him. All I thought was that he's going to catch hepatitis or HIV, and it's a very, very scary. I was petrified.
This sprawling encampment fills one side of the street. Take a look at the conditions, shocking even by LA homeless standards. Yes, that's a discarded jacuzzi tub with bicycle parts inside and so much more. Debris, flies, filth. All this home to Josie for the past 4 months.
I lost my job and I can't catch up on my bills.
She lives with her boyfriend in a wooden shack complete with electricity connected to a power pole. All this on the other side of the wall from the playing fields of Virgil Middle School on Vermont. You can see it all from Skyfox. This location has been a problem for years. Cleaned up, the homeless come back again.
These 2 kids came up and they're like, hey, do you guys know where to get any Oxycontin? They're like, I'm 15 and I'm 16, like I'm an old school junkie, and I'm like, well, look, dude, I'm gonna tell you right now, like, you're not gonna get Oxycontin out here on the street. I was like, how much money are you trying to spend? And they're like, we got $40. And I said, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I am going to take your money, and I went and I got a fentanyl. And I fucking brought it back and I set it down in front of them and I said, this is a gram of fentanyl. This is enough to kill 6 people that have never used it. What I do to get high is this much, and I showed them how much I do. I was like, I'm keeping your money, and now I'm gonna teach you how to save each other's lives because you're not gonna fucking stop. I can't steer you away from doing it, but the best thing I could do for you now is give you real drugs and show you how to do it properly and show you how to save your friend's life. And I showed them how to pull up Narcan and how to inject each other with the Narcan needle in case they died. I needed the money, let's be honest.
That's what we call socially responsible business. Give him an ESG certificate. He gave the kids Narcan. I mean, what are you going to do? Arrest him?
I was there as Moore declined an offer of shelter.
I will never voluntarily incarcerate myself.
Okay. No worries, Mr. Moore. That's your decision, okay? Please be safe, okay? It sounds as though what you're saying is that really we shouldn't be coercing people at all into treatment. Is that right?
Yeah, we just need to make treatment more attractive.
This right now is literally by choice. Literally by choice. Like, why would I want to pay rent? I'm not doing shit. I got a fucking cell phone that I have Amazon Prime and Netflix on.
She's been offered shelter, but
I haven't taken it because it's all the people that live there. So I'm not used to with other people.
When we surveyed people in supported housing in New York, I remember almost everybody wanted their neighbors to be clean and sober, but they didn't want themselves. They didn't want to have rules themselves about being.
We offer to help the man with services for the homeless, but.
Sir, do you need help? The city is offering help.
People are people on the street because they want to be on the street?
Definitely addiction is the main driving force, and then after that you're in a position to where you're stuck. Like, you can't really go back. It's hard to go from, oh, okay, I'm done being homeless now, I'm gonna just turn my life around and all of that, especially with addiction to lumber. It's doable and it's possible, and I hope to do it someday. But
I made friends with Dilan Yasiligov on the right, a Turkish immigrant who should be the Netherlands' next prime minister if negotiations go well over the next few days. We became friends, and on the way back from a talk I gave that she hosted, she said, you know, you might be interested in my husband, Rene. And he's sort of a tough guy who's quiet in the back of the car. And he looks a lot like Jason Statham, the action hero. Talks a lot like him too. And I said, you got to answer me a question, Rene, like, you know, because she said, you may be interested because he works on homelessness and drugs. And it seems like your hometown, San Francisco, has some of those problems. And I was like, yeah, what is going on? He said, look, you know, you need carrots and sticks to deal with people suffering from addiction and mental illness. And you've taken away all the sticks in San Francisco. This is a story that most people are aware of. We had large hospitals that housed our mentally ill. We decided that they needed to be shut down. We thought we could treat people in the community. And so we shut them down. I thought it was sort of an old wives' tale. People would say things like, they just put people on the street in the 70s. Just put them on the street. And I was like, that can't be the case. That was the case. They gave them $50 and they were on the street. And that was liberation for the anti-psychiatry movement. Where did all those people go that were let out of the mental hospitals? Many of them became homeless. The first modern homelessness epidemic was essentially a combination of people that were mentally ill that had been in hospitals and crack addicts. The rest went to prisons. In this very famous chart now, you can see it wasn't deinstitutionalization, it was transinstitutionalization. We moved people from hospitals to prisons. It's not a compassionate solution. We don't have enough psychiatric beds. You can see what you need. The red line shows you need, according to leading psychiatric experts, 50 psychiatric beds per 100,000 individuals. You can see in Netherlands, Portugal, the European Union, they're above that number. In California, we're well below it. The reason the Netherlands has been able to reduce the number of psychiatric beds is because it's able to get people care in their community. Rene, the guy I mentioned before who looked like Jason Statham, was able to help a friend with schizophrenia live on his own in the community in the ways that people had hoped to do in the 1960s, but it required some amount of coercion. It was a friend of the family. He described grabbing him by the lapels when he was in a psychotic episode and saying, "You've got to come with me to the hospital," briefly hospitalized, treated properly with proper psychiatric care, and then gradually brought back into the community. Now he lives alone. Renee said that when he had a psychotic episode recently, called Renee, "There's people staring at me through my window, what do I do?" And Renee said, "Try closing the blinds." And he did, and that worked. But not everybody has a Renee. Caseworkers are essential. Pairing police and social workers is essential. We know how to deal with these problems. We're not doing it in the United States. You don't have to choose between mass homelessness and mass incarceration, but that means that you need the 3 key Ps: more police, more psychiatry, and more probation. I'll end with Dennis Culhane. You may remember earlier in this presentation, I mentioned there was one of the most influential homeless policy advocates in the country, experts. Dennis Culhane, University of Pennsylvania, does a lot of the big analysis for housing and urban development. He said, we must defend housing first. It's the only thing that works. Very different story when you get him to open up a little bit, as I did when we talked.
It was advocates who coined the phrase homeless. Kim Hopper and Bob Hayes, Mitch Schneider, Mary Ellen Holmes. They're the ones who thought homeless would be a soft, fluffy term for the public to be sympathetic of. But there were less polite terms being used for many years before that. It's mainly the domain of a bunch of charities who are unlicensed, unfunded, relatively speaking. They rely on a lot of private donations by unqualified people who do a shitty job. It should be a professional service done by people with master's degrees who are qualified, paid adequately, and who are expected to do the job and get it done with the outcome we want. Not just assign you willy-nilly, oh, I got a case manager over here who sometimes, I don't know where they went. If you have someone who's consistently like using drugs in public, they're not able to live in a conventional apartment because they're always getting evicted, they're starting fires, they're violent, whatever the case may be. And for those people, I do believe some contingencies to shape their behavior could lead them into a conventional apartment. People have ideology. They turned housing first into an ideology and not into a actual practical understanding of choice. Because choice means options. And if my only option is to live on my own somewhere where I'm going to be isolated and there's no rules about my behavior, I'm going to die. I can't live, I'm going to kill myself in that situation because I can't control it.
That's what's happening out here.
So I'm saying that's what we have. So I hope you
say this. What happens when you say that to the advocates? What do they say?
I haven't really said, I just make sure I tell the advocates that I am not ideological about housing first, and neither should they be. This job is about being practical and listening to people and listening to what they need and want and what are they saying. And what people are telling you is that they want contingencies in many cases.
Thank you, California.